Some Republicans are hammering the Trump administration on trade and Russia. So how does the Republican senator from South Carolina, Lindsey Graham, feel? He sits on Senate Judiciary and Armed Services Committees, among many other things.
Yes.
Thanks for taking a break to come see us.
Thank you. Glad to be with you.
I want to play a little bit of what the president had to say, meeting in the Rose Garden today with the president of the European Commission about where we go on trade.
This will open markets for farmers and workers, increase investment, and lead to greater prosperity in both the United States and the European Union. It will also make trade fairer and more reciprocal, my favorite word, reciprocal.
So what do you think about what the president's doing on trade?
With the European Union, it could be a major breakthrough. Maybe the biggest change between us and Europe since the end of World War II, if he can pull it off. When it comes to China, they're the biggest cheater. The tariffs are hurting, but we've got to experience some pain to bring about change. So I'm going to stick with the president. And if he can put a win on the board with Europe, then eventually Canada and Mexico, all of us turn our attention on China, be a home run.
And China, along with some others, they're obviously targeting middle America. A lot of people, farmers, agriculture people, they know have supported this president.
Right.
They're very precise about what they're doing.
Well, they are. And, you know, BMW makes BMW's largest plants in Greenville, South Carolina. They sell 81,000 cars to China every year. There's a 40% tariff on cars made in Greenville going into China. That's hurting BMW. It's hurting Iowa farmers, but we got to push through it because China cheats. And if somebody doesn't bring them to heel, they can destroy our economy. So I'm willing to suffer through this, but I want the Europeans on our side. I want the Canadians and Mexico on our side against China. And you see the first step toward a unified approach toward China, beginning with Europe.
So you think there'll be short-term pain for long-term gain when it comes to these trade issues?
We've got to, yes. If we don't change the way China does business, they can put Boeing out of business. They can put BMW out of business. They can destroy the world economy because they have such power and they cheat and they steal intellectual property. So Trump's right about China. If he can put wins on the board with Europe, get a better NAFTA deal and focus on China, then he could be a historic president in terms of changing trade.
Okay, let's talk about Russia now. And let's start with the Secretary of State testifying on Capitol Hill before the Senate today. Here's what he said about the issue of Crimea.
I want to assure this committee that the United States does not and will not recognize the Kremlin's purported annexation of Crimea. We stand together with allies, partners, and the international community in our commitment to Ukraine and its territorial integrity.
Has this administration been tough enough on Russia?
They've been tougher than Obama, but the goal is to get Russia to change their behavior. Pompeo's an outstanding pick for Secretary of State. What they're doing with Iran is a game changer. Pompeo called out the Ayatollahs of enriching themselves at the expense of the Iranian people. The president is kind of being like Reagan toward the Soviet Union. Iran is an evil empire. And I think we can break the back of the regime. And the best way to do that is to help the people. But when it comes to Russia, I've got new sanctions, very hard-hitting, because it's not just enough to be tougher than Obama. You got to get Russia to quit doing what they're doing. And if you believe Dan Coates, and I do, they're still trying to interfere in our elections in 2018. So I'm coming up with the sanctions from hell against Russia, and I hope the president will get behind it.
I know it's a bipartisan measure.
Yes, very bipartisan.
Okay, so we'll see where he goes on that. But as you said, very important that the secretary was speaking directly to the Iranian people this weekend in his remarks to them. Do you think they're getting the message through the leadership, you know, that it obviously is at odds with its own people on many things?
For 8 years, Obama basically licked the boots of the Ayatollah for a nuclear deal that proved to be very flawed. This president saw the Ayatollah for who he is. He's a religious Nazi. They've been trying to build a nuclear weapon, not a nuclear power program for peaceful purposes. There's two groups that would use a nuclear weapon if they could get it: ISIS, Al-Qaeda types, and the Iranian regime. This president with Pompeo sees through the smokescreen, and they understand that the Iranian regime is an enemy of the world, not just the Iranian people. And with an effort to reimpose sanctions and an information campaign informing the Iranian people of how badly they're being treated, I think we can bring this regime down. And if you could replace the Iranian regime with something better, and almost anything would be better, it'd be the biggest change in the Mideast in my lifetime, probably be the biggest accomplishment any president could have since the end of the Cold War.
And we all know about the power vacuum when there isn't a backup plan after individuals leave who have been dictators or theocrats in one way or another. Okay, so let's talk about the Supreme Court nomination. You sit on the Judiciary Committee. Judge Kavanaugh is making his way through the Hill. Now there are two meetings with Democrats, at least two that we know of on the schedule, that are going to happen. But here is what the lead Democrat in the Senate says about the nominee.
If Kavanaugh would have let Nixon off the hook, What is he willing to do for President Trump? Alarm bells should be going off for anyone who believes in checks and balances.
In the meantime, you have a Republican colleague, Senator Rand Paul, who says he's undecided on Kavanaugh. He wants to stop and wait and see. You need every vote to stick together. It's going to happen.
There is no way in hell that Rand Paul is going to be the deciding vote to stop Kavanaugh from going to the court. He's the most qualified person the president could have picked. He has an outstanding resume. He's been a judge for over a decade now. He's a conservative's conservative. He is a home run pick. There'll be more than a handful of Democrats voting for this guy because they'll lose their seat if they don't, and Rand Paul is not going to be the deciding vote. He might vote no if Democrats give him cover, but there's no way he's going to deny Kavanaugh a seat on the Supreme Court because he's just too well qualified.
Well, and every vote will count on that front. Thank you for covering a lot of topics with us tonight, Senator. Great to have you.